Hey everyone, welcome to the Hobby Lobby Creative Studio. I'm Sarah. Well, have you been avoiding knitting patterns because they just look too confusing? Well, we're here to help you out today and give you all the information you need to know to be able to read these patterns. So hang tight and I'll be right back to get you started. So if you're looking at a knitting pattern for the first time, it can look a little intimidating. So we're going to go over all the different sections that you would typically see on a knitting pattern in order for you to understand what it is you're even looking at. So the first thing you might notice is a skill or difficulty level. These can range from beginner to expert. So if you're looking for a pattern as a beginner, you definitely want to pick out a pattern that's at a beginner skill level. Not far down, you'll see a section called the glossary. The glossary contains a list of abbreviations that represent actions or descriptions pertaining to a particular pattern, along with the full word these abbreviations stand for. So when you're looking at the lines of your pattern, you'll notice this is where your abbreviations are. So abbreviations are used simply to make the pattern shorter in length. And what I would suggest doing as a beginner is to actually go through your pattern line by line and look at the abbreviations and actually write out the full word that that abbreviation stands for above those abbreviations. And then practice reading through each one of those lines, just saying the full word out, and then you'll start to associate the abbreviation with the full word. And pretty soon you'll just be reading through those lines of your pattern just like it was second nature. You won't even have to think twice about it. So I kind of do it like this. I look at my pattern and I say, okay, CO. Well, CO stands for cast on, write it above that abbreviation. K stands for knit. BO stands for bind off. So just practice doing it that way and you'll get it before too long. Also, go ahead and take a look at the printable that we'll have available along with this tutorial, and it will have a great list of general knitting abbreviations on it that you can start to study with and refer back to whenever you need to. So now that we know what abbreviations are for and how they're used, let's do an example using some of them. So here's a row that you might see in a knitting pattern. This row of instruction tells us, with number 7 needle, CO12STS, work 2 rows in GST, BO until 1 stitch remaining on needle. So let's refer back now to our glossary of abbreviations and spell that out. So this sentence says, with a number 7 needle, cast on 12 stitches, work 2 rows in garter stitch, bind off until there is 1 stitch remaining on the needle. And it's as simple as that. Maybe not as confusing as you thought, right? Next, you might see a finished size or measurement section. This section indicates the finished size that your knitted piece should be. So it's a great way to make sure that you're on the right track whenever you're knitting. Next, you might see a section called materials or supplies. This will tell you everything you need to have in order to complete that project, such as the type and amount of yarn you need, what size needles they suggest using, and any additional items that may be required to finish your piece, like a pair of finishing needles perhaps. Next, you might see a section called gauge. Gauge is the measure of the number of stitches per inch. The actual number of stitches per inch affects the final size and the drape of your project as well. So typically a gauge swatch is a 4-inch by 4-inch knitted area that you would test before knitting your actual project. Everybody knits a little bit differently. Some people knit looser or tighter than others, so you have to make sure that your knitting style matches the recommended gauge that that writer has indicated for that particular pattern. So here's what a gauge looks like. So it's a 4-inch by 4-inch knitted area that you've knitted using the recommended needle size that the writer has indicated for that particular pattern. So after you've knitted this, what you would do is grab your ruler and just place it on here, and without stretching this piece out, you would measure how many stitches you have in between that 1-inch area. So after you've got that count, you compare that to the recommended gauge of your pattern. If you have fewer stitches than they recommended in that 1-inch area, you would need to go down a needle size so that you could fit more stitches in that 1-inch space. And then on the flip side of that, if you had too many stitches in that 1-inch area, you would need to go up a needle size to make your stitches larger so that you would have less stitches in that 1-inch area. So you'll often see a sentence on your pattern right under that gauge that says, or size needed to obtain gauge. That just means that the writer of the pattern wants you to find whatever size needle it's going to take to complement your style of knitting in order to obtain that gauge that they've recommended, because this is really going to affect the final size and drape of your project. It's really tempting to skip this step of making a gauge swatch and just dive straight into your knitting project, but it would be a lot better ahead of time to find out that you should have used a different size needle than when you're putting your sweater on and it doesn't fit. So it's very important to always make that gauge swatch. Now the last section you might see on a knitted pattern is a finishing or assembly and finishing section. The finishing section contains instructions and information for you to use near the end of your project. So it might indicate where to put a decorative item such as a pin or a button, or it might indicate how to join seams together at that point. So anything that you would find in the finishing section is just helping you put that extra finished, polished look on whatever project that you're working on. Well, that's it for today, everybody. I hope you learned a lot of useful information that will help you whenever you're reading through your patterns and your abbreviations. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. We'll see you next time.